Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Fabach. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk will travel to Paris on Tuesday to take part in a meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, comprising countries supporting Ukraine. Now, leaders from more than 30 nations, alongside NATO and U.S. representatives, are expected to attend the first Coalition of the Willing summit of 2026, focused on finalizing security guarantees for Ukraine amid Russia's ongoing aggression. Now, joining us to analyze the implications for Ukraine and Europe is Milan Lelich, political analyst at RBC-Ukraine. Good to have you back on TVP World.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So let's begin with the expectations of the Coalition of the Willing. What do you see as coming out of this meeting that starts today in Paris?
Well, as it was said before, the number one issue is the finalizing of the security guarantees package, which can come from the Coalition of the Willing, so most of all from the European nation, and it will include several points. For example, like the deployment of the contingent of the several members of this coalition somewhere in Ukraine, perhaps in western regions of Ukraine, maybe in the center, perhaps. Then the monitoring of the possible and potential ceasefire, how it will be done. Then the long-term security cooperation with Ukraine. Then the way the Ukrainian partners will react in case Russia breaks this ceasefire or breaks the terms of the peace deal, and so on. So a lot is to discuss. From what we've heard from official comments from President Zelensky, first of all, he said that the majority of these issues are more or less finalized, but still I think some work still needs to be done, and also there will be discussions with the American envoys, with Steve Witkoff, with Jared Kushner, and the agenda of those discussions is not that clear. I think we'll debate it later on.
Okay, you'll get to that in a moment. I want to ask you about what you said, the security guarantees. I mean, in essence, we've talked about this for a while. How credible are these kind of security guarantees if they don't offer any sort of explicit U.S. presence or backstop?
Well, it's obviously maybe not all about U.S., but the majority of it is about the United States and their involvement in this or that form, either in the form of backstop or providing something. So I think it will heavily depend on the official form of these papers, meaning Ukrainian side will never agree on second Budapest memorandum, which proved that it is not unable to defend Ukrainian national interest, Ukrainian sovereignty from the foreign external aggression. So it means that perhaps some security guarantees will have to be ratified in the national parliament of, I don't know, France, Germany, Poland, whoever is involved, and as well in the U.S. Senate. And there was some information that the Americans, they promised that they are ready for this. So it means that these papers will have their not only like practical, but also judicial weight, which is also important, I think, dealing with Donald Trump. So we'll see. I think that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will provide the answer to your question, basically, and our delegation, our president will hear that, because as of now, there are different controversial signals. There is even some information that the Americans are ready to deploy some of their troops somewhere here, either to monitor the contact line, to monitor the ceasefire, or somewhere, don't know, in Western Ukraine again. But frankly, I can hardly imagine any American troops being deployed somewhere on Donbass, near Pokrovsk or Konstantinivka, especially under Donald Trump. I can hardly imagine this, but okay, everything may happen. So I think that all these issues will be debated. And also, there will be another issue on the table. There is an elephant in the room, because we have seen a series of really quite fruitful, meetings bilateral between Americans and Ukrainians, multilateral Ukrainians and Europeans, all sorts of formats. There were online formats last Saturday where the European NSAs coming to Kyiv and Steve Witkoff being online and so on. So it's all about the US, Europe and Ukraine. The process is going. There are some success already has been achieved. So we are underway there. But it's all about Russia because we cannot sign any peace deal neither with Europe nor with US because we are not in the state of war neither with US or Europe. There, unfortunately, Russia has to be at the table, and the Russians are not yet there.
All right. I want to also ask you about what you mentioned there about the representatives of the United States, the envoys. It will be Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, and also Mr. Witkoff. There was talk of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, also attending. That ended up not happening. What do you make of that? I mean, is this significant enough, this shuffle? Is he coming? Is he not coming? Who are they sending? Does that present us a message here? And what is that in your mind?
Well, it's always very interesting to follow who will be from the American side of the table. This time, either this will be Marco Rubio or some guys with basically no official positions, but like Jared Kushner, he's just a son-in-law and all the stuff. Or either it will be, I don't know, J.D. Vance or somebody from his team. So they will change, and it gives a lot of ground for different analysis and conspiracy theories. So this is all very interesting, but I don't think that this is that much important. What we really understand, you do not have to have real insights from the White House or from the Capitol Hill, is that there is an ongoing fight inside the current administration with between different groups, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance and his team, Witkoff and Kushner as Trump's friends, relatives, groups, so on. So they all fight for that for the title of the one who will deliver, all caps, deliver the result to the president. It means ceasefire, end of the war, big deal, peace deal, whatever Trump likes. So there will be some fight, but it's interesting to analyze. But I think that anyway, Marco Rubio is at the table as of now, and J.D. Vance and his guys seem not to be at the table at the given moment.
All right. Also, you mentioned earlier, Milan, elephant in the room. I want to ask you about another elephant in the room on Tuesday, which will be obviously what's happened in Venezuela with all these different countries here gathering. How much is that going to impact any sort of strategic calculus, also gauging Russia's reaction? How much is that going to be a factor in the meeting of all these leaders?
Well, speaking about today's meeting and also basically the impact of what has happened in Venezuela on Ukraine and Russia-Ukraine war, I think that it's mainly about the oil. If it all ends up in whatever form possible, I don't know, transitional government, the opposition leaders will come, I don't know, the vice president, who is now the president, Delcy Rodriguez, will rule, or she will rule together with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and it text that, who knows. But if it all ends up with Venezuelan oil being on their markets, then it will be good news for Ukraine and bad news for Russia, because obviously the prices will go down. And there is already such a trend, unexpectedly, because in the times of turbulence, usually the prices for oil, they go up. Now they have gone down, and because this is definitely good news for Ukraine, because it means that Russia will not be able to finance the continuation of its aggression. Doesn't mean it's going to stop in a week, in a month or something, but in a middle or especially long-term perspective, it means that Russia will run out of money. So definitely for Ukraine, it's all good, but still, the situation, from what I understand, the situation in Venezuela is so uncertain that, unfortunately, it could easily end up in some sort of a civil conflict or even civil war, which may, on the contrary, worsen the situation, and the global oil prices may go up, potentially. Still, there is such a scenario, and So it will mean that it's bad news for Ukraine and good news for the aggressor. But let's hope it will never happen.
Yeah, and on that fact, I mean, you pointed to uncertainty, and that certainly is now going on in this world because of we're still impacting, digesting Venezuela. But in your mind, does this, let's say, make Putin more worried, this case, or does it somehow give him a plan to do something similar? How do you see Putin viewing all this and vis-a-vis Ukraine?
I've checked Russian official sources and Russian propaganda for their reaction immediately after the Saturday events in Venezuela. So a lot of them tried, to persuade themselves that this is some part of a bigger deal, some, like global conspiracy theories. For example, like Russia has allowed Americans to capture Maduro or capture Venezuela, and this is a quid pro quo, which means that Americans and Trump will close their eyes and lose interest to Ukraine, for example, or Taiwan, in case with China, and something. So some global conspiracy theories. I think it is all not the case. It means that Russian global power is diminishing. They have suffered several major defeats in a row. It all started in Syria, then it was a war in Iran. Before that, there was war on Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan. Russia had, this is very close to their borders, but Russia had nothing to do with all the events, and all the credits for the peace deal went to Trump. And now this is Venezuela, another more or less ally in the Western Hemisphere.
Right, and I'll have to jump in on there, unfortunately, Milan.
Does not have resources.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have to cut it there. I mean, it's an interesting connection there that many will analyze over the next few days. Look, thanks so much. Always a pleasure. Milan Lelich there. Thank you. And thank you for watching World Talk. We'll stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.